listening to Mile High Insiders with Nick Kendell and Luke Patterson. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com for all things Broncos. Now, it's time to find out what's going on behind the walls of UC Health Training Center.
Let it breathe for a second while Chad brings up the other ones. I'll wait for the emphatic hand sign from the boss man. No Bwana today behind the scenes, but we're happy to be here, give Bwana a little bit of a break, and we got the thumbs up from Chad. So Luke, I'll give it over to you on a silver platter. Happy Saturday and good to see you.
Yeah, happy Saturday, man. Playoff football, a great day.
Exactly.
There's more football tonight, football going on as we speak. But you know what? It's time for MHI, man, and I'm pumped to talk with you. So much has happened, Nick, since the Raiders game, since we last had our show. So we got a ton of stuff that we've got to get into, and I can see a ton of support right now from some of our regulars saying hello. But before we get into it too much, he's Nick Kendell. I'm Luke Patterson, and it's 2021. The first week of the Broncos offseason is officially in the books, man. And what a week it's been, right, Nick?
It's kind of odd. We had been talking about it all leading up to the offseason here, especially when the Broncos started off so slowly and looked like they were out of the playoff contention pretty quickly. That weird offseason, obviously given the funny little bug going on, young offense and quarterback injuries. Thought the Broncos were kind of pushing this message of continuity, making things stable for 2021. And then the head honcho, the face of the organization for decades and decades, the Prince of Denver, John Elway, is promoted from losing some of his duties and is out the door now, which, again, I try to be pretty non-biased and analytical when it comes to the Broncos and covering the Broncos. But when it comes to Elway, I have a hard time being super biased because, that was my childhood dude growing up. I went as him for Halloween twice. So I was a big John Elway fan. So it's kind of sad to see that close and kind of end on a whimper, so to speak, but interesting to see what's going to happen. And, man, that word continuity, blown up. When the top guy's gone now, you can't really preach that now. So who knows what's going to happen? Going to be an interesting offseason.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason, and we've got a ton of things to get to. And I mentioned the playoffs, Nick. Playoffs are happening right now. And speaking of the playoffs, guys, you guys got to get over to sportsbetting.com. Be sure to know tonight's live stream podcast is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Broncos country, gambling is now legal in the state of Colorado. And if you're looking to make watching each NFL playoff game or your favorite sports game just a little bit more interesting, sportsbetting.com is your no-brainer destination. Here's why. Sharp odds, low juice. They've got in-house bookmakers. They're not a third-party provider with odds. They've got reduced juice and the best prices. Now, here's the thing. There's hassle-free bonuses with a one-time rollover. That means the bonus money is yours after you bet it just one time. Now, other sites, those range between 5 and 30 times, not at sportsbetting.com. There's 24/7 live customer support, always a real person in the U.S. Here's the kicker. Now, right now, after you make your first deposit, sportsbetting.com will match it up to $750. That's $750 in free bet credits. Plus, right now, with the NBA season's going on too, folks. Do not forget about basketball. Get in there for $25 of free bet credits. So head on over to www.sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle. That's www.sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle. And be sure to capitalize on up to $750 in free bet credits. And be sure to start 2021 off on the right foot. And guys, just a couple little bit more matters of business as we crank along here. Be sure to know this is the Mile High Insiders, and we really appreciate you guys being here. We are a part of Mile High Huddle. Get at Mile High Huddle on Twitter. And for the Mile High Insiders, at MHI_football pod. If you're joining us today via Facebook, we appreciate you so much. Be sure to become an official supporter, like, subscribe, and guys, most importantly, get that swag on. I see so many of you guys on Twitter with so much huddle up gear. I just got myself some new gear ordered with Chad. I cannot wait to get it. Get on over to huddleuppod.com and get your swag on. And guys, we've got so many great podcasts on Mile High Huddle. MileHighHuddle.com has got articles. We've got guys working through the night, and we are your best source for covering the Denver Broncos.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
And Nick, first things first, man. I was surprised, I'm going to say, with the John Elway announcement. For me, I don't know if someone were to ask me, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I feel a little indifferent, if I'm going to be honest with you, because I feel like John is going to be around and he's not going to be around at the same time. It's a weird gray area for me. He's obviously trying to ride off into the sunset. Joe Ellis is trying to not extend anything. He's already got the, legal process working out with the estate of Pat Bowlen. But what was your initial thought, man? Were you surprised? Were you happy, relieved, upset? I mean, raw emotion when you hear the John Elway news. What do you think?
Well, it was a mix of a lot of things. Part of it, I guess, initially was shock. This did not really seem like it was coming down the tracks for this offseason. A lot of people were painting it as a year from now, which, I mean, that kind of caught me off guard. And it's kind of like a good show where it ends a season sooner than you think it could have or should have, maybe kind of falling off the rails there at the end, getting a little bit off the grid. That kind of can say the thing about Game of Thrones where they went a little bit too long. Definitely nerding it up in here with the football podcast. But, it just went a little too long. And I'm happy that, I guess in hindsight, I'm happy Elway could kind of save face in a sense. I mean, obviously he's still the Duke of Denver. And, he'll always have a spot at the table, and if you ask me. But I'm glad that he could get out of here before it started to get ugly, because there were starting to be some pitchforks, torches lit up for John Elway. And the fact that he could kind of go out on his terms is a positive. And also, I guess then I come up to the possibilities. It makes me excited. It's not a secret that John Elway was definitely the guy most in the corner of Drew Lock. And say what you will about Drew Lock, he has not been good enough in his 17 games to date. He's going to be 24 years old, 2 years left of control on his contract, and 2 years with injuries that impacted him in this game. So I think there's the fact that this team isn't going to have such a short-term scope now with a new GM coming in rather than Elway and Vic Fangio just playing for 2021 means that, they can make better decisions. That means quarterback is back on the table. It means the coaching staff could be changed. So I like the possibilities. I like that also, especially from the general manager, you need a guy who has a big scope. You can't just be looking like, oh, cornerback's bad, so we have to use the first round pick on cornerback in 2021. That's just not how it works. If you have a GM operating in that frame, you're already going to fail. So I'm just excited about that vision. But I mean, a little scared. It's an unknown. Who knows who the Broncos quarterback or general manager is going to be? Who knows how good they're going to be? You don't know until enough time passes.
Yeah, I feel like Frozen too, right? Into the unknown. For those of you that have seen, I feel like that's where we're going right now with John Elway, and I'm not afraid to sing it. Definitely wondering about the reaction. But speaking of reaction, I want to say what's up to our crew in here tonight, because we've got a good show and we've got tons of folks coming in. I see Ernie Mays with the "What's Up, Go Broncos." Appreciate you joining us via Facebook, Ernie. Hope you're doing well. We've got Paul 8806 coming in. Mohammed, our guy. Appreciate you so much, Mohammed. Look at that gear. Get your swag on. Like Mohammed, be sure to get at the Huddle Up Pod store. What's good, MHI fam? Mark Anthony coming in the house. What's up, Broncos country? You guys are killing it tonight. One of our OGs, Mount Rushmore, MHH superstar, Steve Baumgartner. Hope you're doing well. What's up, guys? And we are rolling. We've got Rich Stimson in the house, Jay Roper, CC, and John's going to kick us off because John says, look, man, we got to get going. You guys are 10 minutes into the show. I want to talk football. Here we go. John Huston coming in with the 199 super. Appreciate you so much. Go Broncos. Who's the leading candidate? I can't find the info. Nick, let's talk about the candidates right now for general manager. They say they started with a list around 25, 20. Well, they essentially got it down to the 5 candidates, right? We're looking at guys like Anthony Champ Kelly. You're looking at George Peyton, Dave Ziegler, Terry Fontenot. I'm probably not saying that right. And then you've got my guy, Brian Stark. We'll get into that a little bit. But what are you hearing about the leading candidates? Because at milehighhuddle.com, we've got a huge GM watch going right now. But why don't we go ahead and update John as best we can?
So my understanding is that Patton has already had his interview. It went well, but from what I have heard, Peyton, excuse me, I'm pronouncing it like the general.
Yeah, that's how it's read. I know it's weird. I had to write it with a Y just so I wouldn't screw that up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we're following the English laws here, the A would be the long sound rather than the short because where the vowel is after it. But Peyton coming in, I think he would be my number one, but it does sound like he is actually leaning towards the Detroit job. So we will see what happens there. But Peyton is one I would like a lot. After that, I really think that Fontenot is the guy who would be the next guy if they don't get Peyton. I really do like Champ Kelly. From what I'm hearing, he is more in line for director of pro personnel. So he's kind of like that second man in charge. And it's kind of like when they hired or when they interviewed, this is going to give some PTSD to some folks, but in that cycle before they hired Vance Joseph, they interviewed him and they did not get to bring him on for defensive coordinator. They interviewed him it was for head coach to do the Rooney Rule, but they were more interested in him in that first cycle for the defensive coordinator position. So I think that's kind of a similar thing with Champ Kelly from what I've heard. They would like to bring him in, give him more power than what he has in Chicago, but maybe not general manager, just maybe one step under it. And I think it would be either Peyton or Fontenot as the number one guy.
Yeah, Ziegler for me is out. The Patriots way does not work. Just go ahead and name any list of coaches you want, from Romeo Crennel, Bill O'Brien. I mean, we can just go on and on and on. It doesn't work. And, I think he appreciates the interview, and I'm not trying to speak ill of the guy because I'm sure he's a great football mind, but that's not what the Broncos need. The Patriots way. I'm sick of hearing about that. For me, man, that's interesting to hear you say that, Champ Kelly is possibly looking at the director of pro personnel, because I'm wondering if that would mean he would keep Brian Stark around, assuming Brian Stark doesn't get the GM job, because I'm a huge homer when it comes to the Broncos scouting team. I see these guys on the road. You get to know them a little bit. I'm not saying I know Brian. He's not a friend or anything like that. But so many times, Nick, when the GM comes in here, they like to bring their guys in. And a lot of these scouts, they lose their jobs, and sometimes they don't ever get back into the scouting business again. I mean, you hear stories of guys that have been scouts with the Bears and the CFL, and now they're working real estate. And scouting is obviously one of the hardest jobs ever, but it makes me wonder a little bit. I actually think that Stark will be interviewing tomorrow as the last candidate. I know there's one more before him. Do you know if that's Fontenot?
Fontenot, excuse me. I see
okay.
We have Richie Rich in here correcting us. Fontenot. Thank you, Richie Rich, keeping us on the pronunciation.
He's from Louisiana.
Yeah, so that's definitely there. I think that my understanding also is that Stark is interviewing, but he's more of he's the backup for director of pro personnel if they do not bring on Champ Kelly. So we'll see if it plays out that way. That's just what I have heard. You never know. Once you get those interviews, somebody might blow you away and then you lean that direction. But it sounds like I think they are more likely to go with one of Peyton or Fontenot. There you go, Rich. And then it would be either Champ Kelly, or if Champ Kelly doesn't accept DPP, as the acronym would go, then it would be Stark. But we will see. You never know. All you need is an interview and things can change. So it's going to be interesting. And we don't know if this guy's going to be good or not. I mean, that's the thing about evaluating like coaches or players versus personnel guys. There's so many different guys in there. You can't like just directly evaluate the decisions they've made because there's so many other guys who are making the decisions. We can evaluate scheme and like leadership for coaches or traits and tape for players. But for for personnel guys, you don't know until you know. So while I'm excited about it and I hope they get it right, I'm going to be kind of a more wait and see to see what happens with that guy.
Yeah. I like that approach, Nick, because sometimes the truth lies somewhere in between. You're going to get young guys that flame out, and then you're going to get young guys that get chances and then flame out and then get another chance, and then maybe they find success down the road. Everybody's got to start somewhere, right? These GMs don't just become great GMs overnight. One thing that I really like about Brian Stark, and I see some comments in here about Josh Allen. I knew I would, and the Josh Allen Drew Lock comparisons. We'll get into quarterback here in just a little bit, but obviously Josh Allen, the Bills avoid a scare from the Colts. They win their first playoff game in 25 years. That's crazy. So when you start talking Josh Allen, the very first thing that I thought of today when I saw Josh Allen was Stark, because Stark and Kubiak were the only two Broncos officials that went to Wyoming's pro day to actually go see Josh Allen, to take interest in Josh Allen. So, I think with Stark, you can hang your hat on some successful drafts after he was promoted in 2017. I believe he also actually worked, Nick, with Ziegler, because they were both scouts, I think, on the same team for a little bit there with the Broncos. So I like Stark as an internal candidate, but I'm a little concerned, man. I'm a little concerned about the youth. And that brings me to my next super, with a youth. This is coming from a Ute. I feel like my cousin Vinny there. Rich Stimson coming in here with a $5 super. Go Broncos. Appreciate you. And welcome to MHI. I hope you two are having an awesome night. Why not Adam Peters? His resume seems to add up really well, and he doesn't seem to be on the list. Nick, Adam Peters is a young guy. He's got a history with the Denver Broncos. His name was initially linked with the Broncos. Why not Adam Peters? Why isn't his name why isn't he the sixth name? I mean, these are Zoom interviews, Nick. Why can't you do more interviews? Is this guy's pushing away from the Broncos? Is this the Broncos not wanting to go that route? What's your opinion on Peters and why he's not really included in this Broncos GM search?
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, he has the ties with the Denver Broncos front office, even back to John Elway. Doesn't have any with Fangio, I believe, like Champ Kelly would, but still, he's a guy who has some Denver ties, and he's done pretty well at San Francisco. I mean, you can say what you will about John Lynch versus Kyle Shanahan and that power dynamic there in Santa Clara, but still, I mean, Peters is a guy who's very well spoken of, and I'm just surprised I didn't bring him in for an interview. I am happy to see that the Broncos are bringing in some minority candidates. I don't know that Joe Ellis emphasized that being a point of emphasis for this team in this cycle, but still, I'm kind of surprised that Adam Peters didn't even get a formal interview. Haven't heard anything about that behind the scenes, if he denied the Broncos or if he was looking elsewhere. You never know. But I think it is interesting, and it's something that I hope more information will come to light on going forward.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, Rich, because I think it's a question we all have, even about some different guys. I'm wondering, what about Rick Smith, man? I mean, the guy had to walk away from the game because his wife had breast cancer. So, I hope things are well for her and, of course, his family. But he's got connections with the Broncos and he's got experience. It doesn't seem, Nick, like they want an experienced guy. It seems like they want a young guy they're going to give the keys away for the first time. That makes me wonder what John Elway's role is truly going to be. Now, Joe Ellis can come out and say John's not going to meddle and all this other stuff, but Joe Ellis really isn't in charge of the football side. He runs the business, man. And
it does seem like he kind of pushed Elway out a little bit, though. I think Ellis came out of this with more power than I thought he had coming into this whole thing. I mean, before, if you had asked me who was the head honcho as far as the decision makers for the Broncos, I would have said it's probably Elway, just with the clout that he carries. But coming out of this, in hindsight, it does seem like I underrated how much power Ellis has overall. And this was kind of a gentle, we'll see you out the door, John. Thank you for everything. Let's get you out of here gracefully. You still have an office anytime you want, but things are changing. And for better or worse, we'll see what happens. But I think Ellis might have more power there than you are indicating.
Yeah, he's got the power. You're right. And he's the figurehead of the three-head trust. And, it's interesting because then I also look at it on the flip side of you're John Elway. You can't get fired. No one can fire John Elway. No one can fire. Now, someone can also make the argument that Mike Shanahan should have never been hired. And I'm listening. I'm not saying I necessarily agree or disagree, but those arguments are there to be had. And guys, keep the comments rolling. I want to be sure we start getting to you guys. What's up, Cody Potter in the house? Appreciate you. We got our good friend Charlie Beagle coming in here asking some questions for GM. How tall should a GM be? And then we've got our guy Jason Christopher coming in with a $4.99 super. Appreciate you, Jason. Hope you're having a great Saturday night. I'd love for Von Miller to retire Denver Bronco, but I feel it's in his best interest to compete for another championship. What are your thoughts? Now, Nick, before we go down the wormhole of the TMZ story that's going on with Von Miller, let's stay clear of that, all right? Because we stick to football and the business of football on this show. So we're going to steer clear of that. Chad had thrown something out there on Twitter too to let everybody know, it's obviously a story and we understand that, but we're talking football. And Jason wants to know, Von Miller, will he be playing football as a Bronco? Does he really want to retire as a Bronco, or does he want to try to capitalize on another championship run with a more Super Bowl ready team?
I mean, that's a great question. It does kind of mimic the end of DeMarcus Ware's tenure in Dallas, where that team was just not set up to compete at that point. And while DeMarcus Ware obviously still had plenty left in the tank, I mean, he was huge for that Broncos team in that 2015 run to winning the Super Bowl and Von Miller's career in general. I think that this is a question that we're going to have to say, and I am a huge Von Miller fan. I mean, I remember jumping up and down when they drafted him just because I was all about getting that pass rusher and excited about Von. But I think they're going to approach him with a restructure / extension, maybe upping some of those guarantees and pushing the deal out a little bit. Question is, does Von Miller want to do that versus the contract he has now? The ball's in Von Miller's court. We obviously saw him on the Stokely and Bye show where things got a little bit testy for Von Miller when they asked him about restructuring, and he kind of shut down and logged off, so to speak. So we will see what happens when the Broncos come at him with that again, because they have to. I mean, they cannot pay him what his age is and his output coming off his injury, what his contract is. I mean, I don't think they have the cash to do that. That would mean really limiting yourself this offseason and, coming off a serious injury and a down season the year before. Still pressures, but still a down season before the injury. So this might be the last we see Von Miller in a Bronco jersey outside of a ceremonial retirement, which is, I mean, that's devastating for me emotionally. I try to really separate that emotion from the head of it all. And I think that's a very possible reality.
I'm okay with it, Nick, just because it's the business of football. Von Miller will go down as the greatest defender of all time for the Denver Broncos. No doubt. Pro Football Hall of Famer, I am sure. And, it's okay if he goes somewhere else and he finds success, as long as it's in the NFC. I don't need Von Miller going to the AFC West, Kansas City Chiefs or anything like that. That kind of stuff scares me, man, because then you've got some old beefs to settle up on. And it's tough for me. If you want to, I think if I'm the GM, Von, thanks, but no thanks. If you're not willing to take the reduction, I'm going to have to just let you go. And then if you're the GM, if I'm that GM, Justin Simmons, I got to pay you, because I'm essentially getting rid of the figurehead of the old regime. And who can the Broncos hang their hat on as a true leader of this team right now? I would argue Justin Simmons is probably the closest thing to that. Congratulations on getting snubbed once again. Don't know what the guy has to do to make All Pro. It's either Pro Bowl or All Pro. Never one of the same, man. So it's tough, man. But Jason, I appreciate that question. That's a good question, man. I mean, it's tough. Von, everybody wants to know about Von Miller. He's the greatest Bronco, dude. He's the greatest Bronco defender. I'm not sure if he will retire as a Denver Bronco.
I mean, we still kind of got a glimpse, though, of life after Von Miller. Bradley Chubb earned that Pro Bowl nod this season. He was pretty good, even though he kind of started off slow coming off that ACL injury. Malik Reed played better than anybody thought. And this Broncos team, while their defense, you can argue, they weren't as good as you'd hope this year. They played a very difficult schedule. According to DVOA, they actually had the third hardest schedule against opposing offenses. So they played the third hardest schedule when it comes to who they were going at, quarterback, wide receiver, et cetera. And the offense, I think, played like the 30th most difficult schedule. So the defense that they played were way easier. And you still had a solid defense this year. At the end, I mean, down to a late third round pick at cornerback and an undrafted free agent. You can't win. I know a lot of people will point at Fangio. He's got to be better, but imagine if the offensive line was dealing with a third round rookie at offensive tackle and a guy they just picked up as a UDFA at the other tackle spot. You're going to get killed. I mean, you can't be that weak at that position. So you just can't. I mean, it's too important. Cornerback, offensive tackle, edge rusher. So it might be the end of Von Miller.
Well, and to clear up a quick question that we just had, I mean, the Broncos aren't going to trade Von Miller, right, Nick? I mean, that's just the economics don't make sense.
The team's not going to trade for him for his contract, and knowing that the Broncos are pressed to move on from him. They would rather just sit on their hands. Maybe somebody would offer you a 7th round pick as kind of a joke, and maybe the Broncos would jump on that because it's better than not getting anything. But you're not going to get an equitable return for Von Miller's play because of the contract, because of the injury, because of his age, and just where the Broncos sit. Teams know that, where they sit. I mean, Broncos didn't trade for Peyton Manning. You think Colts fans circa 2012 were saying, well, why would we release Peyton Manning instead of trading him? The contract, the unknowns, the situation they're in. Sometimes the situation means that you're not going to have that opportunity. So that's probably where it's at for Von Miller. Maybe he will do a restructure. I would say it's a coin flip at this point, though, whether or not he does, and he would be a Bronco in 2021. So we'll see. And we got to get to this guy. We got to get to this, though. Pabby coming in here.
Ooh.
Thank you so much, Pab. The red super chat as well. Don't see that one too often. Glad to catch you guys live. we are glad too. Thank you for the amazing podcast, something I look forward to on my day off. Hope you guys are doing well. Thank you again. I'm doing pretty well. My arm's a little sore. I got my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine yesterday. So, besides lifting up MHH, writing 2 articles in the last 48 hours, helping out Chad. He's actually behind the scenes today, so I got to give him a shout out. Thanks for joining us, Chad. Well, Bawana's taking an off day, but we really appreciate it, Pabby. Obviously, if you guys aren't able to catch us live, we are on YouTube after the fact. We were on iTunes after the fact as well, but man, we really appreciate the people who can join us live and contribute the way that you do, Pabby. So thank you so much.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, Babby, I got to say thank you as well. I hope your 2021 is going well. And just the support is overwhelming, man. Not to get too emotional or anything like that, but greatly appreciate your support. It allows us to do what we do, especially Nick and I, as we dive hours and hours and hours into traveling, film study, writing with pen and paper, charting plays. I mean, it helps us so much. So, Pabby, you're an absolute superstar. We are so grateful that you are a part of the Mile High Huddle family. We've got our boy Jason coming in. Thanks again, Luke and Nick. I appreciate all you do. Jason, we appreciate you. And guys, we appreciate all of you on the show joining us on a Saturday night. We've got a good crowd tonight, Nick, and I see they are rolling. So I have got to ask you, we got to get to the meat and potatoes. We've been talking GMs a little bit. Those interviews are wrapping up. I would assume they are going to have a general manager this next week. They have no time to waste. There are, 6 other GM jobs available, including the Broncos. And with the Houston drama and stuff like that, no, Deshaun Watson is not coming here. If you want to know why, please get on milehighhuddle.com. Chad Jensen wrote an excellent article trying to diffuse the situation a little bit on why it's probably not going to happen. And we could certainly entertain those talks. But Nick, a new GM is here. Let's say he can be whoever. Let's say it's Kelly, right? Let's say it's Ziegler. Let's say whoever you want. Dimitrov. Pick the GM.
No, just for Richie Rich, so I get the pronunciation right again.
All right. And that's Chad's guy, and that's Zach's guy as well.
I think that's what it's going to be. That's my bet.
That's okay. Is he your guy, or do you just think he's going to get it?
I obviously pussyfooted around it earlier, but like with personnel guys, you don't really know until you're far enough. So I don't really have a flag in the ground as my guy because we don't know what situations. I mean, we were talking about Champ Kelly earlier, like, oh, he screamed for Trubisky. We don't know if he screamed for Trubisky or Mahomes or Watson. You don't know because we don't get to evaluate that and actually see what happens. So I'm not going to get too head over heels about any of the guys. I just hope that they end up picking the right guy. But from what I've heard, I think Fontenot will be the candidate or the guy.
Fontenot's hired. He's hired.
Yes.
He's our guy. John's on the yacht, chilling, taking a vacation. Fontenot's trying to get his scouting staff together, trying to get ready to go to the Senior Bowls, trying to start getting ready to study this draft class, getting ready for free agency. What's the first thing that you would do, or what's the first thing that you think the general manager needs to do for this team? There are so many questions in the air. They're a bad football team. They're boring. You got Dalton Reisner talking about how this stuff is unacceptable. Guys are fed up. What do you do if you're the Broncos general manager? What's the first thing you're going to address?
Well, for me, I'm probably addressing the quarterback position, and that could mean multiple outlets. That could be bringing in a guy like Winston or Mariota to raise the ceiling of the room. That could be like bringing in a guy like Fitzgerald or Tyrod Taylor, which would raise the floor in the room. But the quarterback is probably the number one. And I think that's got to be the number one question that these guys are asked, because you're seeing it's almost, if you don't have a good enough quarterback in today's NFL, you're just simply not going to compete. It's never been more important. It's obviously always been the most important position in American sports, but it's never been more important than it is today, given the haves and the have-nots and how obvious it is having a quarterback. Unless you have an all-time roster around him, you need that quarterback. And having an all-time roster is just, it's a flash in the pan. That's like depending on the lottery if you're going to have that guy and compete, or have an okay quarterback and compete. So obviously, it starts with the quarterback. What do they think of Drew Lock? It's no secret that in the Dove Valley, the number one supporter of Drew Lock was John Elway. That's been hinted at. I mean, we might as well just flat out say it. So the question for Drew Lock now and the quarterback position, I think, is as open as it has been. I don't think Drew Lock is not a part of the plans, but I would say his ability or for him to be the gone on away favorite for the Broncos starting quarterback next year at least has been cast into doubt with this instability of the general manager position. And you listen to Vic Fangio talk about it. I don't think he's a lover of Drew Lock. I think he's a little bit on edge being in a hot seat season. If I'm depending on that quarterback, what I've seen so far, I don't know if that's good enough for me. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. It's an interesting quarterback class. The Broncos are within striking distance of a top quarterback in this class. I really hate the narrative that it's a Trevor Lawrence only class. This is not a one quarterback class. There are 4 guys who are worth top 15 picks. So if you love a guy, then I have no issue going to get them just because that position is so important. But we'll see what happens. But it's got to start and stop with quarterback. That's football. That's football today.
Absolutely, man. And you and I were talking a little bit before the show. So just to, scale back the curtains just a little bit, I think we both agree. If you love a guy at the quarterback position, go get him. And, maybe that's another reason that John is being elevated, whatever you want to say, moved up. He's gun shy. He's gun shy, man. He's been burned a little bit, right? He's been burned by Paxton Lynch. He's been burned by the free agent quarterbacks. Now, I think it's more likely we're going to see a veteran free agent quarterback here as opposed to a first rounder. But to say that first round quarterback is crazy, no, it's not crazy.
It's on the table.
Yeah. And Nick's got an article coming. It's coming, folks. It's going to be hot. He's going to explain some of those options of why it's realistic for the Broncos to be looking at a quarterback. So be sure to be waiting for that at milehighhuddle.com. I can't wait to read it. We were talking about that before the show as well. So, yeah, man, it starts at quarterback. And here's the thing with Drew Lock. Do I like Drew Lock? Yes. Do I think he's salvageable? Yes. Do I know if he's a franchise quarterback? He's not. Right now, he's not a franchise quarterback. When you are throwing, just the fumbles, the interceptions, and there are flashes, Nick. He's salvageable. He is. But the dirty little secret in the NFL, it's all about fit. Drew Lock does not fit Pat Shurmur's offense, and the Broncos have made it very clear. Transition of ownership, all these little moves that are being set up for, a year or two down the road. The coaches aren't going anywhere. Pat Shurmur is staying, and Pat Shurmur, he doesn't have love for Drew Lock either. So if you're Vic Fangio, what do we know about Vic Fangio? He cares about his defense. He could care less about the special teams, and he could care less about the offense. And that's not me being a Vic Fangio hater. That's just me being honest with what I'm seeing. Now, if you're a defensive guy and your quarterback is constantly putting you in a poor position, your defense in a poor position, you're probably not going to like him so much, Nick. So I don't think quarterback is such a crazy thing. It's the most important position on the field. You got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's Mike Clay who does the roster construction power rankings every single season for ESPN before the season starts. He actually splits up the positions based on percentage-wise of how valuable they are. And the quarterback in itself for how valuable or how good a roster is 24% of his equation. The entire rest of the offense is 24, and then it's 50% of the entire defense, which shows, quarterback is it's that important. It's a have or have not position. And we have 17 games for Drew Lock so far. He has the arm talent. I think he has the arm talent. I think he has baseline athleticism. He could be the guy, but so far, 17 games, that's not nothing. He's going to be 25 next year. That's not nothing. We're talking about versus 22, 21-year-olds and the top 4 quarterbacks in this class, and also just 2 years left of control. So it's again, I'm just saying it's on the table. You can't rule it out. I know there's a lot of people who say, look what Lock can become, but Broncos are in striking distance. Let's say this team gets really healthy next year and they're picking 18. You know how hard it's going to be in a less talented top of the class next year. I'm pretty confident in saying that. We knew about Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields at this point last year, like being dudes. Sam Howell's good. He's not Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, that as they were 2 years ago. Spencer Rattler, apparently he's not a good dude. I'll just dance around that. He's kind of a Donnie Manziel kind of person. Tools, but it's just, so again, I think if you love a guy this year and you're interested in going young quarterback at all, don't kick the can. You're in range right now. You've stocked up picks in the past few years. Now's the time to strike. If you like a guy, obviously you have to like the guy. They have to match the scheme and everything, but if you like a guy, I don't think there's any reason to not be aggressive and go get him. Now, that doesn't mean you end up with him. You could have the 49ers who are just so in love with Zach Wilson and he falls to 3 that they are willing to just 3 first rounders and 3 seconds to move up for a unknown. I'm not an unknown, but a lottery ticket still in the draft. You're probably not going to do that as the Broncos. But still, like you have to at least put in that work.
And you have to entertain the thought. And I'm fully expecting. I think John Elway is going to be in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. I really do, because Ozzie Newsome shocked me when I saw him last January. He shocked me that I was like, this guy can't get enough. I mean, like, it gave me goosebumps just to meet the dude. I had a little fanboy moment. But I got Richie Rich coming in here, and he always has great questions, and I love to chat with Rich. He's one of our good friends. Nick and Luke, my only reservation is, what young quarterback has Pat Shurmur actually developed? This is a question and a comment, Rich, that I like. And if we're just being honest, Nick, I mean, I'm not going to say, no, I'm a Shurmur hater or I'm a Shurmur fan, but at best, his offense is ranked 17th in the league in Minnesota with, Case Keenum. That's at best. I get he's an Andy Reid disciple and all of that, but just because Andy Reid is doing really well right now, I mean, just having the time of his life, right? It's just, for me, I'm not sold on Pat Shurmur. He's not going to be fired. I see some comments in here. I appreciate the comment, but guys, he is not going anywhere. Vic Fangio made that clear. I wrote about it on milehighhuddle.com. Go check it out. Nick, what do you think about Pat Shurmur, and has he developed any young quarterbacks? What's his success look like as an NFL offensive coordinator?
I mean, I know that a lot of people talk about coaches and who have they developed, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's about the Jimmies and Joes and the X's, not the X's and O's. So while a guy can be a good quarterback developer, sometimes it comes down to that individual quarterback they have. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is still getting paid by Michigan because he vicariously was around. I mean, he was obviously the head coach, but around Andrew Luck for those years. Now he's this quarterback whisperer and developer. Right. I don't know about that. He's still getting paid for that. So that comes down to that individual quarterback. So Pat Shurmur, there are some reservations there. We should have some reservations there as far as a developer. But at the same time, you have Mike Shula, who came in and completely changed the Carolina offense, going from a second-round pick who was very up and down in Jimmy Clausen to a very toolsy quarterback in Cam Newton. I'm definitely emphasizing the up-and-down second-round quarterback there with Jimmy Clausen. For a reason, for the Broncos. But so I think that, I mean, Shula, we saw what he did with Cam Newton's rookie year. He set all those passing records that year. Obviously, they've been broken then because passing just keeps getting more and more crazy in the NFL, all-time high this year in passing and point outputs. But Shurmur came in, Cam Newton made a very simplified offense for him. And man, Newton set records his rookie season. So I think there is some precedent there for some offensive staff there that they can develop a guy, but we'll see what happens. And also Daniel Jones was not bad last year. He kind of had some Drew Lock issues as far as the fumbles and turnovers go, but he wasn't, out of place. And I underrated Daniel Jones. I thought he kind of had an okay arm, but I did not, I did not put enough stock in his athleticism and his intelligence. So he looks competent out there. I would love to see Daniel Jones in San Francisco in that type of offense. I think he'd be great there with his athleticism and smarts. But
wow. I hadn't considered that. That's really interesting.
It won't happen. I just think that he'd be a perfect fit there. But still, it would be interesting to see what happens. But again, it's how many times has Shurmur got to deal with, premium mahogany? He's been dealing with driftwood for these past few years. You said, his best offense was with Case Keenum.
Love
okay.
It.
Like
right.
That's what
Minnesota Miracle, greatest thing ever. Yeah. How many Super Bowls has he won? Yeah,
exactly.
He was a tight ends coach, right? With the Philadelphia Eagles. He's supposed to be this tight end whisperer. I mean, yeah, Noah Fant had a great year, but I still feel like Noah Fant was underutilized. I mean, the guy was out there with one leg pretty much all season, right? And I've eaten crow because he came into training camp out of shape. I called him a bust, way too premature. I eat all the crow in the world on that. I like Noah Fant a lot. This season, Nick, has completely changed my view of Noah Fant. I think he's tough. I don't think he's a leader, and that's okay because it's his personality. But you know what?
22 years old still too.
Well, yeah, sure. But I feel like at that point, their personalities, I think you're either a leader or you're not. And Noah Fant, though, for me, he's a weapon. He takes pride in what he's doing. I believe he's going to attack this offseason, man, with just crazy aggression and just come out and look like a better tight end. So Pat Shurmur, hello, can we get him involved a little bit? I know you love Melvin Gordon, and you can say that you didn't love Melvin Gordon in the press conference earlier in the year, but we all know that you wanted Melvin Gordon. You and John Elway wanted Melvin Gordon, and you got him. can we get some screenplays to Melvin Gordon? Can we get, I know he was utilized a little bit better and he didn't quite get those 1,000 yards. And maybe that's another conversation we have to have, Nick. Melvin Gordon going out of bounds at the end of that game, man. How selfish. And I thought you, because I know you love running backs, but Nick, I digress. I don't want to get you all caught up on the running backs, and running backs don't matter and everything like that, because we're going to have some great running backs going into these playoffs. I'll get you mad then. We got Kenneth Booker coming in here with a $2 super. Appreciate you so much. Speaking of running backs, look at that. We got TD and Phillip Lindsay on the picture right there. Appreciate your $2 super, brother. Go Broncos. Would love if they got Jordan Palmer for the quarterback coach. This is awesome, Kenneth. I'm so glad you brought this up, because it's something I've wondered about too. Nick, why isn't Jordan Palmer a quarterback coach in the NFL? Does he not want to be? Do coaches not buy into the work that he's doing? In my opinion, the guy's clearly a master at what he does. He's done wonders for Josh Allen and other quarterbacks. He may not have been able to play the game at an elite level, but he understands quarterback mechanics. Can you talk a little bit to Kenneth Booker about Jordan Palmer? Quarterback coach, can Drew Lock maybe work with him a little bit?
Yeah, no, I actually got to meet and interview Jordan Palmer at the Missouri Pro Day a few years ago. He was on his way out the door because he was Drew Lock's quarterback coach for the pre-draft process. And
I forgot about
as soon as the pro day was over, I chased him down and talked to him for a little bit about what he's done. Josh Allen also he was a Sam Darnold guy. He also had Jarrett Stidham. So obviously hit or miss. I just think Jordan Palmer has such a great position right now. He essentially gets to pick which quarterbacks coming out he wants to work with, rather than those guys picking him. And I don't know if he'd make more money working in the NFL than he does right now, considering he's getting these elite quarterback prospects to come in and work with him in the pre-draft process. So I think maybe there's a conversation to be had there, but I think Jordan Palmer's pretty happy where he's at and pretty secure where he's at as well. Yeah, especially given his recent success and what we've seen with a guy like Josh Allen. So, and also I saw we always have this Josh Allen versus Drew Lock patience debate, Josh Allen obviously being this outlier, et cetera. I had an analogy today that came to me that I just kind of wanted to get out there. When you guys are comparing these stats of Drew Lock versus Josh Allen the first 2 years, that's for the baseball people out there. We're wearing our baseball caps today. It's kind of like saying you have two hitters and they hit 250 this year. They're their first two seasons. Okay, well, maybe they can get better in the hitting department or the average department. However, if you are just looking at that, not looking at the entire picture, you would see that one of these guys at batting 250 hit 40 home runs and was a Gold Glover. The other one was a guy who hit 4 home runs as a DH level fielder. That's kind of when it comes to Drew Lock and Josh Allen, because you're not taking in the total tools and the rushing/red zone ability of Allen if you're just looking at the pure passing stats. So that's something I kind of wanted to get at, a little cross sports analysis there for when it comes to, the stats are one thing, and also still an anomaly. If you're banking on an anomaly, you're probably going to go broke. It's just not a 1-for-1. I think it's a terrible comparison. I hate it. It's easy, but it's not a good comparison.
I hate it too. We've talked about it so many times. They're stylistically, physically, they're just two different guys. They're two different quarterbacks. They do not profile the same at all. Start with the size. And I saw a comment in there. I didn't get to grab it, but it was, did you see Josh Allen almost pull a Drew Lock today? I saw Josh Allen do some Pat Mahomes kind of stuff there, right? With Dawson Knox in the end zone there for that touchdown, some flick of the wrist type stuff with Stephon Diggs, man. That guy, dude. He's a beast, man. And Drew Lock doesn't have the physical tools that Josh Allen does. Their throwing mechanics are completely different. And how long are we going to talk about Drew Lock's feet, if we're going to be completely honest? Footwork, it's easy. It can be fixed. It hasn't been fixed in 3 years, guys. So, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse in this league. And Drew Lock shows flashes. Flashes aren't good enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So Drew Lock's got to do something. I don't know if he's still working with Jordan Palmer. That's a really good question, Kenneth Booker. I really appreciate that, man. But I know he talks to Kurt Warner every single week. I don't know if they work out, if they go through film or whatever. I'm not sure, how much he communicates with Peyton and stuff like that. Peyton obviously does his own thing. And no, Peyton Manning will not be the general manager of the Denver Broncos. Sorry, folks. just not going to happen. I know there's some articles out there that said, the phones aren't ringing from Peyton and John's not calling him or anything like that. And so guys, just don't expect it, man. It's going to be a cat that will be a rookie, someone that they can mold a little bit and maybe try to get through a new transition of ownership. But Kenneth Booker, I love the question. Jordan Palmer, he's working wonders. I'm jealous too, Nick. I'm jealous you got to interview him, man. Was he a cool guy? Was he a nice dude?
He was hauling ass to get out of there. I think ass does show up in the Bible, Chad, because it's a word for a donkey, but to get out of Columbia. So I only got him for a second, 5-minute interview as we were on the way out to the car. But I mean, the fact that he was able to slow down and talk to me for a little bit, and we talked a lot about football and that whole time, scheme development, arm talent, athleticism, etc. It does matter. So it was cool to talk with him, meet with him. He's pretty high up there. I also got to meet with, when I went and covered them, met Todd McShay, who had a mock draft recently I wrote about. Nice. He had the Broncos taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who is a kind of a safety linebacker hybrid for Notre Dame, and also met Daniel Jeremiah, who I love.
Did you? DJ,
cool, yeah.
dude.
DJ's cool.
Yeah, dude. I was talking to Cecil, man. I was watching some of the games with him today, and he was talking to me about how when DJ was a scout with the Eagles and stuff like that, he was one of the first people to come on the Audible and stuff like that. And now he's just, man, he should be a GM one day, right? I'm thinking, dude, pipe dream, Louis Riddick and everything. How awesome would it be to have Daniel freaking Jeremiah as a general manager? Sign me up, man. I am jealous. But guys, this is kind of our last segment. And this is where we like to open it up to you guys. You guys have been killing it with the super chats and the comments. We've got Marcus Lewis Henna coming in here with a $3 super. I'm not able to see that super sticker right now, but I want to let you know.
Here.
Yeah, John's got the magic. He's taking a Roby day. We appreciate him, but thank you very much for your support. It allows us to continue our show and our growth at Mile High Huddle. And here we go. Now we've got so much going on in the chat here. We got Casey Martin coming in here. It's not wrong to believe that Drew Lock can keep improving. Reaching Josh Allen's levels, probably unrealistic. Now, Casey, I agree with you. It's not wrong to think that Drew Lock can improve. He can. He's a nice kid. He comes from a good family. He's shown that he can do things, but sometimes the bad outweighs the good. And when you're just turning the ball over, man, it's killer, Nick. And this isn't us being Drew Lock haters. I like Drew Lock. I know you like Drew Lock. We don't want Drew Lock not to do well. That's not it at all. But I would be doing you a disservice as a professional. So would Nick. So would anybody at Mile High Huddle if we're not telling you what we're seeing. And what we're seeing right now just isn't good enough. So, Nick, Casey's not wrong, man. We can hope that Drew Lock is going to improve. I know he puts the work in. I know that he cares. But what do you think about Drew Lock? Do you think we're going to see improvement from him? He's certainly hearing all this stuff. Maybe the Broncos are going to get a quarterback. Maybe John Elway's not going to be able to defend me. What would you say to Casey about, Drew Lock and his improvement?
Well, I think that there is some improvement there, but the level of improvement is worthy of being questioned. He played some absolutely terrible defenses down the stretch, and he played, he was the trailer, not the truck. He was the guy kind of just guiding the offense, but not the reason the offense was doing incredible things. Right. So that's something to weigh in. Also, something that I thought about that kind of struck me today, and it was talking about Vic Fangio's philosophy of evaluating his own team. And in previous interviews, he said that he likes to take some time to get away from the tape, maybe a month or so, and then come back to it because he does not want recency bias influencing his decisions, which means that where the way guys are trending, how they were just at the end of the season compared to their overall body of work. He doesn't want to be influenced by those more recent games in comparison to what the whole season was. Now, obviously, you can say that is because Drew Lock, something clicked and he flashed. But I would say also at the same time, that's probably a negative for Drew Lock when it comes to Vic Fangio because, the middle of the season for Lock was dreadful. He also struggled before the injury. The Tennessee game, if Drew Lock isn't one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL that week, the Broncos win that game pretty easily. The Titans kicker, also you can blame Vic Fangio's clock management for sure, but the quarterback play was not good enough. And the Titans kicker really helped him out a lot as well. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think, though, if Vic Fangio uses that philosophy again, is using the overall sample size of the film rather than the recency bias of the most recent games, that's probably another tick back for Drew Lock. You listen to people who cover the Broncos that are like super close to the situation, Woody Page, Mike Kliss. Like Mike Kliss the other day was outright and said, like, who would even trade for Drew Lock? That's how little that Mike Kliss thinks about.
Thank you. And that's not a diss. And I put it out there on Twitter, and I wasn't trying to take a shot, but I kind of did anyway. And I'm like, look, I hear Mike Kliss's name just drugged through the mud by all the trolls on Twitter so much. And then we've got other publications using his quotes. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing here, man? I thought we were just being objective, trying to throw honest opinion. And you're exactly right, Nick. I spoke with 4 different teams, 4 different personnel members of different teams throughout the league, and the opinion of Drew Lock isn't high. And that shouldn't be a surprising thing for people. I mean, I'm trying to step back and look at it, and I'm thinking maybe my evaluations of him as a college prospect were wrong. Everybody else seemed to know something I didn't, because, I'm thinking, oh, Drew Lock, he's sliding. I don't know why he's sliding. This is bizarre. I can't figure it out. Well, I'm starting to figure it out a little bit, and we can talk about turnover and all those kinds of things. But man, maybe it was me, man. Maybe I was wrong. But Nick, I feel like Drew Lock, he'll have a resurgency with another team. I think he'll find a fit down the road with another team, and possibly you see Drew Lock come into something. But if you're the Denver Broncos, you're exactly right. You've got to explore the quarterback option.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that is what it is, and also to be fair, I had Drew Lock my number 2 quarterback in that 2019 season.
Me too.
As we get further out, that's partially because of the class. I mean, you had Dwayne Haskins go 15 overall, who has, obviously he's not even on a team anymore. And a lot of that is because the off-field stuff, but he was trash when he was on the field. He was bad. And then you had Daniel Jones, who honestly, Daniel Jones, I would say overall has been better than Drew Lock so far, but you're talking about the number 8 overall pick versus number 42. So you have pretty good return on investment overall for Lock, even being a 2nd-round pick. But in the end, the measuring stick is the first goal is winning your division, right? Every single year, the goal should be we have to win our division in order to get to that next step to get to the Super Bowl. Right now, you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert for the next 15 years. Is Drew Lock's ceiling, attainable ceiling, good enough to consistently put you in that boat of competing in the AFC West? I don't know. If you had a incredible coach, like maybe a Bill Belichick kind of here, where you can have a top 10 defense and a top 10 offensive line year after year, you'll have a shot, but that's rare. So it comes back to the quarterback. Mm-hmm. It all does. And 17 games, going to be 25 years old next year, had a concerning statistics at Missouri as far as completion percentage, has issues locating the ball down the field, accuracy down the field without Cortland Sutton, really bad.
He gets banged up.
Works, not good. And the dichotomy between his play action versus non-play action is like incredible as well. And the most predictive stat for quarterback success is if you take away the play actions and no pressure, how good they are in those situations. And Lock's, I think, the 2nd worst quarterback in the NFL this year in those situations, which does not bode well for him given statistical analysis. So I don't know. I think you got to look at things and evaluate the position. And if Trevor Lawrence is off the table, and if the Jets want to go quarterback, that guy might be off the table. But looking at 3, Miami with Tua, if let's say a quarterback there, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, blows you away, don't be afraid to fall in love. You can't be afraid to swing. There's nothing worse than playing this gosh darn patty cake at the quarterback position they've played these last few years. Oh, we're going to pay Case Keenum. We're going to trade for Joe Flacco. We're going to go with a 7th-round quarterback. Oh, 2nd-round quarterback falling to us. Mm-hmm. You can't be cheap at the quarterback position. Sure. You can't be cheap at the quarterback position. Yep. So
and the retreads. Yeah. And the retreads for me, I wanted to ask you about this. The retread theory, right? This is something I find really interesting because you hear guys, Matthew Stafford, right? Okay, I hear that. There's the argument for that. Andy Dalton, I hear that. There's an argument for that. I see some talk in here about other veteran quarterbacks in the NFL coming to the Broncos. And Nick, I'm tired of that too, man. Here's the thing. The Denver Broncos have never drafted a franchise quarterback in the history of the organization. You look at John Elway, not drafted by the Broncos. You look at Jake Plummer, not drafted by the Broncos. Jay Cutler, it didn't turn out so well, and he went to Chicago, and the rest is history. And Peyton Manning, free agent signing of a lifetime. It's just, man, you got to figure out what your philosophy is. And that's something John Elway's been able to get away with for a long time, not really having a philosophy, running, let's get the band back together with Gary Kubiak and all that's great. But you know what? You had the sheriff. And Drew Lock, I get it. I'm not saying he's supposed to be Peyton Manning. I'm not supposed to, say he's going to be the next Deshaun Watson either. But it's not working. You've got to expect the Broncos to explore. Now, I see you guys in there. I see you guys going after us a little. Hey, man, why not? Why can't Deshaun Watson happen? Nick, why isn't Deshaun Watson going to be a Denver Bronco?
I mean, if he actually was available, there are 28 teams in the league right now that would be calling to go get him. And honestly, if he was available, I would have no issue giving the Texans 4 first-round picks for him, because you set yourself up for a decade. The number, again, it's the question. It's a binary yes or no. And if you can't answer yes to this question, you do not proceed. Do you have a franchise quarterback that can take you to the promised land? If it's a no, you don't proceed. You ask that question repeatedly every single season until you can say yes. Then other things fall into line. Rich and I are kind of going back and forth earlier about the interior offensive line. It's like, I saw that. Christian Berry, rookie, the pass rush is an issue. Sure. But the question number one is, do you have a franchise quarterback? Do you know you have the guy? And if not, you have to at least explore your options. So, those are questions I'd love to get into, but until you answer that quarterback question, who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're the best offensive line in football. You're not doing anything.
You've got to build from the inside out, with the quarterback being the most important position. I mean, that's just the way it is. And until you get one, you've just got to keep going. And you can't Tom Brady doesn't exist in those later rounds. Okay. It's an anomaly. It doesn't happen.
On the lottery to feed your family.
Yeah, exactly, man. And that doesn't work. That's not how you can do it. And the last thing I know is we're starting to wrap up the show here. I wanted to push back on our own Lance. He brought up a good point. I see a lot of people talking about maybe moving Graham Glasgow over to center. Absolutely not, guys. I do not want that. Now, go listen to Dalton Reisner's interview. It's on milehighhuddle.com. There's an article I wrote about it. And he's talking about how proud he is of Lloyd Cushenberry. I was able to go through all of his snaps that he took. I mean, it's just incredible what this kid actually did in terms of a rookie center. Now, Nick, I said I was a little premature. I thought coming out of the SEC, he's ready to go. No, he got humbled, but you know what? He's the one calling the mic. He's the one identifying the coverage for Drew Lock. So, guys, don't be so ready to just throw Lloyd Cushenberry under the bus. I would rather see Nathan Moody at right guard. If Graham Glasgow can't get his stuff together, we're going to have to figure that out.
I mean, you have 4 guys at 3 spots on the interior offensive line, but given Moody's expansive injury history, Glasgow's contract, and the youth with Reisner and Cushenberry, it's something that I'm thinking will work itself out, especially with the season working with Mike Munchak. So, again, the offensive line, we can talk about it till the cows come home, but it only moves the needle so much. It's really quarterback, pass rush, offensive tackle, and cornerback. Those are the positions that move the needle. For this offseason for the Broncos, cornerback obviously is a big one. Maybe some more athleticism at the linebacker position could be big, but then it's that quarterback position. It's that quarterback position.
Yep.
And the Broncos had a bottom 3 quarterback in the NFL this season. Not good enough. He played better down the stretch, but it's not good enough to contend in the AFC West. It's not good enough to contend in the NFC East. I mean, let's be real, especially with that coming back. You can't have a bottom 3 quarterback and do anything. You need the 2015 defense and able to make noise with the quarterback the way Drew played this season as an entirety. So again, doesn't mean he can't become a good guy. I hear talking patience, but 17 games is not nothing.
No,
and we live in a different era. Josh Rosen got 1 season on a horrible team. Do you think the Cardinals are upset that they weren't patient? No, they have a franchise quarterback in Kyler Murray. So again, starts and stops with the quarterback position, and it's going to be a conversation until it's not. And if the Broncos roll a Drew Lock next year, I hope he gets it. But if you love Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, I'm not including Kyle Trask or Mac Jones. Sorry, they do not have first-round traits, guys.
No, I agree.
You go get the guy.
They don't have first-round traits, Nick, but they might be taken in the first round. Bizarre things always happen. And, guys, we've got exciting things coming down the pipe, especially here for next week. Man, we've got a little special thing heading for you guys. The shows have been working, and we're going to kick off a special draft announcement very soon. But, Nick, man, the hour always flies. Broncos country came out in full force. Our MHH superstars. I appreciate you guys so much, man. Steve, Christian, Josh, Nathan, Gary, Cece, Manny, Jay, Richie Rich. You guys are the best, man. I had a blast, Nick.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk football. I know that it's got to get a little bit frustrating. I know people that probably more Drew Lock apologist side of things would say all these things, and there are valid excuses out there along the way. And is it fair if the Broncos are looking at other guys, given, he's had a new offensive coordinator every single year, one of the youngest offenses in the NFL, a weird off season with everything kind of going haywire, not normal, not fair. But you know what? The league's not fair. It's not about being fair. It's about results. And we have not seen the results yet, at least to a point where you take things off the table. So, it's going to be a fun offseason. Things are very much in the air. New general manager coming in. things are going to change. New ownership coming soon. Vic Fangio on the hot seat, maybe a new quarterback. I mean, it's just, there's going to be change in Dove Valley. It just is what it is. So hopefully we'll be along the ride and can give you guys some insight on what's happening, what we think should happen, what shouldn't happen, and take it as you will. And we always appreciate your guys' feedback and take as well, because again, while we are the Mile High Insiders, it's all about that Mile High Huddle community and the communication that we have with you guys. It's a community. It's not just us. It's a community. So that's going to wrap it up for Mile High Insiders today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully what's the game going on right now? Is it the
Tampa Bay and
yes.
Washington football team?
Yeah.
I haven't checked the score, but you can imagine, I'm sure.
I mean, the Washington football team, I still have to do some code switching there for me to not say their old name. They have probably the best defensive line in football. Chase Young and Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. Tom Brady is as immobile as they come. They have a good offensive line. Tristan Wirfs, best right tackle in football this year as a rookie. Crazy. Go Hawks.
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah.
So good.
I feel like Von Miller on the podcast. Blah, 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 blah. Nick in his Iowa. He can't even resist an Iowa plug on the way out. No, folks. This guy doesn't.
I have to do one a show. It's in my own contract, so you can ask Chad. We appreciate you guys. That's going to do it for us today. Find Luke on Twitter at Luke Patterson LP. You can see it there. Find myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, guys, going over to milehighhuddle.com for all of our written content and the Mile High Huddle community. I've had 2 pieces come out after a little bit of a hiatus there when I was extremely busy with my other stuff going on in the world. I had a piece come on the Pro Football Focus urging the Broncos to move up for a quarterback. I just had one on reactions to Todd McShay and the Broncos going Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at 9. Check those out. If you have anything, at me, content or comment on the Mile High Huddle community board as well. Also, guys, go over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. Most importantly, like, subscribe, and share if you are joining us on YouTube. Also, for our Facebook listeners, click those thumbs up. Doing so can really help us continue to bring you these Denver Bronco deep dives. It's not just the Mile High Insiders, although we do have a pretty darn good logo there and a cool apparel. But also, it's the Building the Broncos. It's Chad and Zach with the Huddle Up podcast. If you guys are looking for a little bit more Drew Lock optimism, I would say find Zach, because he's definitely on that end of the spectrum for our podcast host. And also Dove Valley Deep Divers with Lance and Eric. Also, guys, share our content as well. Share it on Facebook, YouTube, subscribe, all of that. I mean, it's so helpful. Follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at MHI_football pod. Luke, you got any plans the rest of the weekend? Anything? I mean, I'm just going to be all football the next 48 hours still. I mean, we're talking about playoffs tomorrow still. Playoffs?
We're talking playoffs?
I mean, the college football championship on Monday too. Alabama versus Ohio State. I think it's 7.5. The line. I'm taking Ohio State. Speaking of our sponsors, I'm taking Ohio State at the 7.5. I think Justin Fields is going to have himself a game. I'm not impressed by that Alabama back 7.
No, man, I'm fully into football mode. I'm fully into the draft. I am exhausted. I'm excited, and I cannot wait to see what 2021 has scheduled. Guys, this is the Mile High Insiders. Thank you so much for joining us, and go Broncos.
Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.